Welcome back. This is the Early Morning Show. I'm Goldie Bruce sitting in for Hema Ramkisoon, and we're having a discussion with the Minister of Food Production, Devant Maraj. And Minister Maraj was just outlining during the break a couple of the main thrusts of the Food Production Ministry that will continue into the next fiscal year. And one of them has to do with the security of land tenure. And how will that affect farmers, and what is the ministry trying to achieve there?
Well, one of the critical areas affecting farmers is this issue of security of tenure. And as I mentioned, under the last administration, they totally ignored this issue. In fact, it was almost unshelved. So as a result, there was an accumulation of lapsed leases. And what was inherited was over 6,000 to 7,000 leases that had lapsed at the point in time. So farmers were requiring various financing for various projects. Persons had died, and their descendants with expectation of inheritance and so on were kept in abeyance. So one of the critical thrusts of the Ministry of Food Production is to regularize the situation as quickly as possible. And because it requires cabinet approval, each and every lease has to be properly prepared with the Commission of State Land and Ministry of Food Production and then taken to cabinet. So we have a process was developed along with some consultants, and we are pressing ahead to have as many as possible, as quickly as possible, carried before the cabinet, so at least to allay the anxieties of over 6,000 to 7,000 farmers and their families. Of course, this
poses a problem for the farmers who would want to, of course, go to financial institutions for loans and use the land as collateral to develop their businesses.
That's a difficulty that farmers are having, and we recognize this, and we're trying to work as assiduously as possible in order to clear this backlog. However, we have an arrangement with the Agricultural Development Bank, which will provide some degree of relief for farmers in that area. As you know, the Agricultural Development Bank has a renewed focus now on assisting the farmers. You would recall that recently we launched Islamic banking, and there are a number of new products available at the Agricultural Development Bank for farmers. In terms of financial products, that would make their life a lot easier. NAMDEFCO is another agency under the Ministry of Food Production, and again was in a state of atrophy. The focus of the marketing component in the word NAMDEFCO would be the focus of NAMDEFCO, whereby it would hope to connect farmers with markets. Right here in Trinidad, if you're looking at domestic markets, the school feeding program, for example, feeds approximately 150,000 meals on a daily basis. And they are in constant need of food products, local food products, and there are certain product commodities that they ensure supply of. And when you look at what the farmers produce, they say, well, they have the abundance in X or Y or Z, and you have the school feeding program with shortages, but there's nothing to connect the two. Right. So NAMDEFCO has been mandated to try and be that link between our farming community and those who would require their products. Not only school feeding program, but hotels and restaurants and so on.
The bottom line in all of this, Mr. Minister, is that the food import bill is extremely high, and it is something that we need to address urgently, as well as in consideration of increases in starvation worldwide, and the fact that many of the countries that we import from traditionally are now holding back on their imports to feed themselves. What in the next fiscal year is the Ministry of Food Production doing to urgently reduce the food import bill, apart from what you've already mentioned?
Well, you're looking at, again, coming back to this tent regularization project, over 4,000 acres of land would be opened up for production under this arrangement for former carried in 1975 cane farmers who would be using it for agriculture in order to support those additional areas of production coming on stream. Several estates under the Ministry of Food Production that was involved in planting material and so on would be reactivated aggressively, because if you have the land, people just assume you go and plant stuff. But where do you get the seeds? Where do you get the cassava sticks? It has to come from somewhere. And that you need to have a propagation unit prepared and ready and able to supply farmers with all the planting material that is required. So we are supporting on the back end with that development. We're also looking at aggressively pursuing the tilapia farming as something which has been around for a number of years, but somehow has never taken off in a manner which would make it economically viable on a large scale. We're revisiting that. We're focusing on some key commodities issues as outlined by our action plan, Agriculture Now, which includes rice, sweet potato, cassavas, to name a few. We hope to have enough cassava into production whereby we could substitute a percentage of the wheat flour in bread making, so thereby reducing our wheat import bill. We also hope to explore new areas in terms of feedstock substitution. So you would have heard I'm looking for 1,000 acres within the Ministry of Agriculture because the Ministry of Food Production has a number of estates that fall under its remit. We are trying to see if we can get at least 1,000 acres under the jurisdiction of the ministry, so we can start planting corn in terms to provide feedstock substitution. Also exploring something called duckweed, which is a kind of weed that grows on ponds for feedstock as well, and several other initiatives, which would include developing an agro-business sector, which would add value to the whole value chain.
And before we say goodbye this morning, what update can you give us on the Predial Larceny Act? Because it's a major complaint of many farming groups across the country, that they work very hard and then are unprotected by legislation when it comes to theft of their...
Yeah. Well, we relaunched the Ranger Squad, which is done in Carson's Field, and already it has had an impact within the area there. I'm advised by the farmers that they have seen a decline in terms of the amount of losses for their particular area. We're expanding the program. I've been in consultation with Minister Warner. As you know, the Predial Larceny Prevention Act of 2000 allows the police commissioner to appoint persons into the Predial Larceny Squad. And I've asked Ms. Warner to make the appropriate recommendations for at least 200 officers to be assigned. As you know, there was an ad recently for SRP, and he had over 31 per 1,000 persons lining up. So I'm asking for at least 200, so we'll be able to spread them over the significant parts of the country where predial larceny is a particular problem. So it's an issue which we are addressing. In addition to labor, labor is also an issue that is facing the agricultural sector. We launched also with Minister Karim, Agriculture OJT, which we again hope to expose persons to agriculture as a possible career opportunity. We are also supporting that with an initiative with the Ministry of Education. We are seeking to reintroduce agriculture into schools because many farmers indicate that their first love of farming came as a result of their school experience with it. And we want to reintroduce that component. We're also reformulating URP agriculture to add another dimension to supporting the labor needs of the agricultural sector.
Thank you so much, Minister Devant Maraj, the Minister of Food Production, stopping by to tell us a little bit about what we can expect, perhaps, coming up in the budget presentation on Monday when it comes to food production. We have a very high food import bill, $400 million, and we're looking to get that down, and already it's down by $20 million. Thank you so much to Minister Maraj for coming out. After this break, we change gears and we look at a candlelight vigil that will be held tomorrow. We'll be talking to the head of the Jericho project. His name is Philip Alexander. Stay tuned.